Hello, patrons. Welcome back to The Spotlight. This is our program where we have the chance to talk to some amazing creatives. Peter is here with me again because we're digging into the world of Star Trek with the one, the only, the storied, the Doctor of Trek, Larry Nemecek. Larry, good evening for us. Good afternoon for you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Just hoping I can live up to that introduction. Gosh.
I don't think it's going to be a problem. Well, it's awesome to have you here. As I said, anybody watching on the video knows. To me, your most famous publication is 1992 first edition of the Star Trek: The Next Generation Companion. But we'll get into that in a moment. But tell us, how did you get started with Star Trek? What's your first Star Trek origin event?
It's a well rutted out story, but I didn't run the TV. I was a little kid. I did not run the TV in our house. My big brother did. I remember Lost in Space, and yes, I'm dating myself, but I vaguely remember there was some other space show with a guy with ears. And then flash forward to ninth grade, and we had a first year excited teacher. And sometime in the spring, long story short, the bottom line was, after a little incident moment, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, Larry, don't tell me you don't watch Star Trek after school reruns." And I was like, "No." And she says, "Go home today and watch it." So I had a weird convolution in my brain that I knew at the time it was Saturday morning cartoon. And I thought, I'll watch the cartoon. And if I like the cartoon, then I'll watch it, which makes absolutely no sense. But that's what I did. But within a month or two, I was like, the daily reruns after school. And our station didn't show the teasers. They cut the teaser and the voiceover to cram more commercials in, because that's what you did in a syndicated market. And no, I like within a month or two. And then I found the Making of Star Trek book. Mm-hmm. And you'd find the rare books that were out there, David Gerrold's book. And I was like, oh my God. It's like, I didn't realize I was absorbing, TV production, much less the history of the show. So yeah, within a few months, I was buying what little books there were, but not the fiction. I didn't care about all you could get for fiction was the James Blish novelizations of episodes. And I'm like, well, I already know how the episode went. Why do I want to read that?
Yeah, exactly.
So even in the beginning, I was like this little niche person over here at the side thinking, mm-hmm. Not even thinking about it in the beginning. And then within a couple years going, oh, I'm not I don't do what most fans are running around writing fan fiction about Spock and Vulcans, and I'm not. That's fine, but you do you, and I'm going to try to flesh out the universe and figure out why they did what they did. Yep. And that's always been my thing.
Oh my gosh, which has set the table for all world building within, I think, and particularly in the print form, for so many different genres. Yeah. But you pioneered it along. So
look, I say this about Star Trek, like before Star Trek, what made people passionate? Well, sports teams and movie stars and rock singers, or singers in general,
right,
Crosby or Elvis Presley or whatever. And it wasn't until, and then right about the same time as Star Trek, the Monkees was big, and they had a Save the Monkeys campaign. But Star Trek broke the mold on so much because it didn't exist before. Like I say, Rick Berman claims to have said this, but like Star Trek and porn is what built the internet. But part of that was because there was never anything before Star Trek that made people not just passionate, but like they wanted to know stuff. They wanted to know where they could buy things. They wanted to know if there was a club near them. They wanted to know if there was a convention. They wanted to know what the prop guy and the costumer and what was known from what people wanted that. And there was no memory alpha. There was no computer. There weren't message, but there was nothing. And it was totally paper and stamp days. And I say Star Trek created the internet with paper and stamps and self-addressed stamped envelopes, because that's the first time people, and it wasn't a flash in a pan. It went on year after year after year.
Right.
And so much of these things like gatekeeping or world building, so many of these, negative, positive, all this stuff, it was the passion of Star Trek that people didn't even think about at the time. Right. Like we have words for this now, and at the time there weren't even words for it. And that's what's, just as pop culture and culture, much less sci-fi and TV. Anyway, that's where your brain can go when you've had, 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years to think.
Truly. Oh.
So I'm one of those fans that loves getting lost in the minutia of Star Trek. I'm a lurker on Memory Alpha.
Ah.
I slept with a copy of the encyclopedia next to my bed. Like I was always looking, like I could tell someone what like a quasi molecular flux was before I could explain like something normal. Um, but you've been involved in Star Trek since like involved since like Next Generation. So I'm sure that TNG has like a special place in your heart. But is there a particular period in universe in Star Trek history that you particularly love, or is it just kind of all of them?
Well, part of what I would say about this is it's like I've always been a proponent for the. I mean, I naturally go root for the underdog anyway. If I don't have a dog in the hunt, that was sad metaphor. If I don't have a dog in the hunt, I root for the underdog, um, which is why I quasi became a big McCoy fan because Kirk and Spock got all the attention, and why I
Right.
quasi became an Andorian, especially a Tellarites fan because they never got any development,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
and still haven't barely. And right now, I mean, the original series, 20 years, that's all there was. Nobody A, B, C, or D. And then Next Generation, I did the book. I waded through it. I did before the encyclopedia and Memory Alpha, I did my concordances,
Yep.
which got me the attention to do the companion.
Right.
I did my own encyclopedia to Bejo depth and beyond. I did Bejo Trimble's concordance my way for Next Gen when it started and got to know desktop publishing and Macs and FileMaker,
Yep.
and all this stuff at the time. And then and I was the person though that everybody else was in love with, what was frothy at the time, the 90s track and that era.
Mhm.
And I was the one that was like, well, can we please, sir, can we do the founding of the Federation and the Romulan War? Can we do
Yep.
what about and then Archer, and people were screaming about, oh, Star Trek's going backwards, not far. I was like, I'm sorry, guys, 2151 is still in the future.
It's
I've
all in
never
the future.
understood this,
Right. Right.
But I wanted to do something. Can we do like midway between First Contact and Archer? Can we do midway between Archer and Kirk? Can we do midway between Kirk and Picard? Can we go to can we
Yeah.
do Romulan
The
War,
lost
founding of the
eras. Yeah.
Federation? That's
Mhm.
so it's not like my pet project would be not so much a favorite that's been out there, but go to somewhere where we haven't fleshed it out yet.
Yeah, that's
Right.
kind of what I was gearing for when I was saying in universe Trek history. So
Right.
because
Yeah.
I'm kind of a lover of the lost periods, the Romulan War and the in
Yeah.
between Undiscovered Country and Farpoint.
Well,
So
the annoying thing about the Romulan War is there's one or two versions that floating around out there. Could we have something on film?
Right.
That's,
Yeah. Make it canon, please.
yeah.
Peter and I are notorious canonistas, and because we do a biweekly Trek show we have for the last 5 years, where we just talk content, we just talk episodes, and yes, we've done the movies, but we're very like, well, canonically, or in beta canon or whatever it is, but no, we
Yeah.
just to the page. That's us. That's kind of the cloth we're cut from. So, yeah, no, I
Okay.
absolutely get it.
We reach, brother.
Yes, I grok you, Spock. Exactly. So back on this wonderful, and again, of course, I had the blue one. I don't have the final one. I was just looking on Amazon; it's out of print, but I'm going to buy it anyway.
It's become collectible, sadly.
I know it's about $50. So I don't know. Is it a hardcover?
Good.
I hope
I've
I
seen
hope
it.
it's hard.
No, it's like those. I've seen it over
Okay.
$100. So if it's come down, that's great.
I guess I better buy. I guess I better buy it tonight before that changes. But yeah, this was with me. I started out seeing TOS and reruns. I'm from Detroit. It was on channel 50. I was probably 6. The first episode I ever saw was Where No Man's Gone Before, the second pilot, the first aired pilot. And then and my uncle and then both of my parents all separately were big trekkers, so that kind of bled back in.
See, you had that. See that
yeah.
your generation had. My mom was like, "What is this?" I mean, I finally decided the episode I was going to show her was Tomorrow's Yesterday, that starts off with the Air Force pilot.
Yeah.
Because it starts from his point of view. But
right.
Yeah, I didn't have any of this. So we were kind of, we were in the closet in a lot of ways. I wasn't. That's the whole thing. Yeah. Have you ever seen Free Enterprise, the movie Free Enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So he's having his flashbacks to being the kid that wore his Kirk shirt and got beat up for it.
Yeah.
That never happened. I guess we were a little cooler or something. When I was in high school, I got my mom to make my McCoy uniform, blue top.
Yeah,
with the dotted braid. No, it's not Spock. Thank you very much.
exactly. Get it right.
And I
Lieutenant
wanted to
Commander.
wear it. I hadn't worn it anywhere, and there weren't conventions. And I was on student council, and I said, "Hey guys, instead of having a Western Day or a Sadie Hawkins Day dress up or something, why don't we have a TV and movie dress up day?" And they were like, "Yeah," because everybody
Ooh.
always wanted, special stuff.
Yeah.
So I helped make the thing that I could slip in and wear my McCoy uniform to school.
Cosplay at school before it was even cosplay. Oh, that is absolutely spectacular.
I've
that's
been known to wear uniforms to work.
very,
So.
very high
Yeah,
level
well, see,
thinking.
now today it's no big deal, but that was a
Right.
little, yeah. But I wasn't going to be stupid enough to get beat up for it.
Right, exactly. Strategy.
Strategy.
So again, getting back to this, this is the 95 edition. So this was the second reference book that I ever lost my mind over. The first was I was 11, and I'm a big Marvel Comics guy, and there was an official guide to that. There were two versions of it, but the second version, the really big one, I was nuts about reading it day and night, and then that waned a little bit, and then this came along because I was on board from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the second edition obviously picks up with Generations. That's the last entry in here. You mentioned you picked up from Joe's concordance, and you turned it into what was the name of yours again?
I called it the well, I had a concordance that I did every year. It just I did an annual update that I self-published.
Okay.
And it was TNG1, TNG2, TNG3, and I didn't have scripts. I was doing a 4-head VCR record, no commercials, and going through it and then pausing. And you could get now we call them acutograms. Back then, with the 4-head, no static on slow play, on fast play, you could freeze frame and get all the little things that most people didn't get until HD days. But I could get that, and I put them in there. And after a couple years, roundaboutly got introduced, and Mike Okuda and Rick Sternbach were sending me bits and pieces, and my friend Eric Stillwell in the offices would send me things. But late great Richard Arnold, as crazy as he was, got introduced to that and was like, "Oh my God, this would save our writers' butts and their assistants, because right now they want to research something, they have to go dig through old scripts."
Right. Oh boy. Right.
So I was like manna from heaven for them. And then after 2 or 3 or 4 years, they said, "You really should do the professional version of this. We're sending scripts to Bijo, and she hasn't done a damn thing with it yet. So you should do this." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, whatever." And then they were helping me with the spellings of Klingon words and the proper names I couldn't get. He would send me the correct spellings, and we would do that.
Yeah.
And then after about 5 years, I wound up, Pocketbooks called and said, "Okay, well, hey, Larry, we want to do this." Yay, because it's all written. Yay, I just have to call. Well, we're going to have Mike and Denise do the encyclopedia and combine it with the original series and go forward with one book. And I'm like, "Oh, but would you do the making of book?" And I'm like, are you? Oh, yes, of course. I'm thinking making it like Stephen Poe Whitfield's book. Yay. Can you do it in 3 months?
Okay.
And just like an actor at an audition, can you ride a horse? Can you scuba dive? Yes.
Absolutely.
And then you go out and take scuba lessons, right?
Right.
I was like, of course I can. I was like, holy shit, But I did. And then thanks to Leonard Nimoy being pissed about the Fruity Post Pebbles commercial where Barney wears pointed ears, he was mad that Paramount licensed that, and he would not approve his likeness. And the biggest thing of TNG through 5 years was Spock being on Next Generation.
Right.
And you couldn't publish without Spock's pictures. That was the whole point of that, So I got an extra 3 months because of that to write.
Thank you, Fruity Pebbles. That is awesome. that is a wild connection.
Which proves that in Hollywood especially, the pictures are always more important than the words.
Oh my goodness. I love it. Peter.
So for another book that you worked on, so more reference books. We've already mentioned that I love those sorts of things. When I run Star Trek role-playing games, my players know that they get a lot of detail about distances between planets and how long it takes and that sort of thing. So one of the things that you worked on was both the star charts and then the stellar cartography projects.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what kind of research you had to do for that. Was it just looking into the Star Trek lore, or did you talk with NASA astronomers and such to kind of, because some of these planets we have an idea it might be this real place, but
Yeah.
maybe not.
Oh, thank you there. Yeah. So what's weird is, so I tell people I was a NASA kid before I was a Star Trek kid. Like
Yep.
I had Apollo mission moon posters on my walls and everything, and then Star Trek came along. But this whole background nonfiction canon, how was it made, Odyssey. I got the tech. I mean, I read the making of and like, oh, that's cool. Okay, fine. And then I got the tech manual, and then there's a separation here. We say the nonfiction is the in-universe manuals and reference books, and then there's the making of books, right? The very down to earth mundane stuff. Not mundane, but you know what I mean, real world.
Yeah.
And my first passion point was when I got the tech manual. I was pissed because they had all these the Franz Joseph Schnabel original tech manual, which blew up, and I had that before the blueprints came out first, which was amazing, but I couldn't find them. But I got there. You go.
I just keep pulling books out if you're not watching YouTube.
The book show and tell. This is awesome. I was pissed because I saw all these gaps. Like, what about this page? So I started like mocking up my own pages and doing deflectors and doing this and that and the other and getting into that. And then I got beat when I first got Bejo's Concordance. One of the things that got me was I thought, oh my God, look at all these stars and planets. They're just all discombobulated. And I knew a lot of things like Alpha Centauri, Rigel, Capella. Those are all real places, real stars.
Yep.
And then I realized that it's almost overlooked, but Franz Joseph tried to do, there are like 3 pages devoted to doing a star layout, a stellar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh, so silly me. My first passion project was I went through the entire concordance, made a list of all stars and planets, and then I started to plot them on Franz Joseph's map. And I knew enough that the real stars would be in a real place, and then I would take the fictional stars and plot them, and then try to make them make sense with the story, like episode to episode and there were just the 3 years, and I did that. And I did that, and it took forever. And it was the days when we were like I did rough drafts, and then I got a big sheet of paper and did a big wall chart with the locators and a telescope. Anyway, the big point was I had rub-on letter-set letters, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And so like when I was like a junior and then a senior and then a freshman in college, I worked on it for 2 or 3 years. And then anyway, and by the time I got finished, I had wound up, the medical reference came out. And this is like the one bing, bing, bing. Every Christmas, Ballantine, when they had the license before Pocket, Ballantine had nonfiction, and they were doing a big book every year, right? So there's the blueprints and the tech manual, then Bejo's Concordance, and then the medical reference. And the medical reference had home stars and planets attached to a lot of the species. And I was looking, and they were all like real stars, which was awesome. And I started plotting them. I'm like, you've got the Klingons on this star that's closer to Earth than the Tellarites are. It's like, what? So I wrote the editor a letter, and 6 months later, apparently it got passed around because it was a committee thing. And a guy named Jeff Mandel answered me back and said, well, Larry, hi, I'm the one that was responsible for that. Now, this is the same Jeff Mandel that wound up working on the series. And I didn't realize at the time he was what I call the New York Star Trek Mafia. They did all the giant poster book. So Jeff and Doug Drexler and all these guys that hung out at the Fed. Now I know this, but at the time I didn't. But at that time I wrote, and he said, well, I'm the guy that did that. And yes, you're absolutely right. That makes no sense. But I'm going to say that I got 1,000 letters from pissed off fans, and yours was the nicest letter about it. So I had told him I had worked on this chart, and he said, I'd love to see your chart because I do a fanzine called the Officer's Manual or something, and I want to use yours, and we'll put it. And I was like, oh, I can be published. This is, I mean, it was, but I also knew that they self-published, and then that's where the medical reference came from. And I thought, well, if he publishes it, maybe I'll get in and be in an official book. And within a year, he came back. We worked on that, and I have all our letters. It's awesome. Someday this is going to do something. And we haggled back and forth on things, and I came up with systems and, for wonky names and all this stuff, and came up with the timeline that was evolving fit into that. And then after about 2 or 3 years of this, he wrote me and said, okay, well, it's a whole new ball game. This guy was working on a new chart system that fixed everything about Franz Joseph because it was too big a scale. He was fixing it. Mike McMaster, he did the Enterprise bridge blueprints and the
Mhm.
Romulan bird of prey. He was killed in a car accident. He was halfway through working on this. They picked me to finish it off. It's a whole new ball game. Everything that you worked on makes no sense now, except for some of the background stuff. And I was like, oh. He said, but if you let me use that, I'll get you a set of maps. So I'm crushed. I'm like in college. I'm like, fine. I'm walking away from Star Trek. I've spent too much time on it, blah, blah, blah. I'll go work in journalism and theater and do all this other. And then, but then it came out, and to make up for it, now it'd be in jokes. It'd be like the Akudagram stuff, right? But back then, there's a Nemecek star on those 1980 maps. And I saw it, and I was so pissed. I'm like, this isn't, I didn't say canon, because we didn't say canon, but I was like, this isn't real. These are just patronage stars you made to suck up with people. I was a little pissed. And so I had talked about this. And so we'd go to a con, and my friends would be with me. And I was like, okay, well, this is weird. Okay, here's the maps. And then he wrote and said, your credit and a couple other people's credit had all been ripped. It's only me and Rick Sternbach are credited. And these other people that worked on them are all ripped out of they took your names out of the credit box after I left. So I was really pissed.
Yeah.
And disappointed. I'm just a kid. Yeah. I'm just like a college kid. But my friends, we go to a con, and we'd see the charts sitting there on the table, dealer's table, and one of my friends would go, hey, Larry, show us your star. I'm like, shut up. And it's like some little kids would come up and they go, hey, he's got a star named after him. Show him your star, Larry. And I'm like, shut. Like, well. That became kind of a thing. And for a long time, I had a brand that I came up with later on called My Star, where it's like a finger pointing at a star. Like, there, that's my star. Like, aha. But anyway, that's where it started. And I walked away. And then when Next Generation came up, I thought, well, I'm going to go back to this and try to do my own Bijo thing just for me and learn Max and learn, what there is to learn.
Yeah.
And too late for the long story short, but eventually I wanted to get back into that. And then third season, Next Generation, Mike Okuda came up with the quadrant system as a shorthand.
Right.
And then, and lo and behold, when I was working, I'd done the companion. They pulled Jeff in to work on the Generations art department the Generations movie art department. And Mike said, Larry, there's somebody you should meet. Hi, Larry, this is Jeff Mendes. Because we'd only talked by letter. We didn't even talk long distance phone call.
So letters and long distance phone calls. Tell me it's the 20th century without telling me it's the 20th century.
Exactly. We never. So we're sitting. So now go forward like 15 years, and we're standing at the Generations art department at Paramount, and I'm about to move to LA, but I've been back and forth working on these books, and Mike introduces, and I'm like, the Jeff Mandel, and he's like, the Larry Nemecek, and Mike is like, what are you talking about, guys? And I'm like, this is insane that we're meeting here, and we both made it. We both got to, anyway.
Yeah.
So that's all the background to then Jeff getting to work on the series. And when Enterprise was a, tiny little show where they hadn't gone very far past Earth, and they had a real emphasis on including or dodging the real stars nearby. And he was trying to lay all that in. And then he did a lot of the same way that Mike would lay in like room numbers and ships and names on Akudagrams. He did that with star charts. And that's why the book makes sense. And a lot of the things he had in his head, he brought to the show. So now it's canon. So now the book makes sense. And that's your start. And then he asked several people to help him with it. And I basically wrote the introductions to all the chapters.
Hey, Secret Friends Unite, let me tell you about Zencastr. We use them for our show, and now they're supporting us. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. Provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content, all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. And we chose Zencastr because of the ease of use, high quality output, and it makes it super easy for our guests to come on. We had multiple solutions we tried before, and Zencastr has just been the best fit for us. Why Zencastr? It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sounds and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencaster's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you're interested in making an easy, high-quality podcast just with the click of a browser button, go to Zencaster.com/pricing and use my code SFU1. You'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Now back to the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
For it.
Oh my gosh.
Plus,
Awesome.
plus, I looked over his shoulder because as the years went by, between our old days, there'd only been 7 years of Next Gen, 7 years of DS9, 7 years of Voyager, right? Like
Right.
all those real and fictional stars to fit in, and fleshing out the Klingons and Cardassians and Rom, that Mike had first laid out. So
Yeah.
there was all that to do, and then you get to 2013, and they wanted to do it. The book was small, but people were taking them and scanning them, and they wanted big charts, and you didn't get that with the little book, even the foldouts. So
Yep. There is
Right.
no
the
website
posters
that
in Stellar
gets
Cartography
used.
were specially designed for people to have big formats, and I kept
And
saying
I have one in
gamers
my,
have to
yeah.
use this.
I
Yeah.
have
Oh,
one in my
yes.
on my
We
dining
use
room
them all the
framed,
time.
and I will send you a picture because I'm so very proud of it. I love it. Oh, it's good stuff. So I'm sure you don't remember. 2 years ago, Vasquez Rocks, LA in a snowstorm. My wife and I wandering around seeing it for the first time, round a corner,
You were
and
one of
there
those
you are. You were there with one of your tour groups, which I was like, hey, I know your face because I'd seen you in videos, and oh no, you have a picture.
No, I'm just saying I can grab stuff too. Yeah.
No, there you go.
That's my
Oh,
day tour business. Yeah.
yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you about. So that was like a magical, it was my first time ever in LA. We were there to go on the cruise, which we did
Oh,
the next
yeah.
day. And I'm like, I didn't see anybody famous except for you. You were the famous person I met until I got on the ship with all the
I was
Star
going to
Trek
say, I hope
actors.
you didn't stop looking because there were a lot on the ship. Yeah.
I did, yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us about Trek tours and tell us about everything that you work on outside of these awesome books that we've been talking about.
Well, the books are like, I call them Dead Tree Media, because for a while, part of the reason they didn't, it's all pocket. When you're in a licensed world, I was self-publishing, and that's cool. And there's a realm for that, right? That's fair use. You can do analytical, or you can do, that. You just can't use image. Again, once again, the pictures are more important than the words, and you can't use like images unless you're licensed.
Mm-hmm.
But and you can't do narrative. You can do fanzines, but you can't get big pants about it, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things to get out of that realm is like, what can you do on your own that you're not trotting on, the rights issues and not being a licensee, or what can you do that you can maybe get somebody's attention and be a licensed something later on.
Mm-hmm.
But one of those things so Portal 47 is my backstage. Let's meet the backstage people. Let's present them. Let's preserve all their stories, because there's thousands of hours from, not the actors people. Because the actors are, God bless them, they're the cherry on top. They're the icing, the shiny thing. That's why, of course, you watch. But if it's Star Trek, you're watching it 4 and 5 and 6 times, and you're probably noticing, when Dorothy Fontana or Gene Kuhn or Ron Moore's name is in the credits,
Mm-hmm.
it tends to be a little bit cooler episode, but by and
Yeah.
large. So all of that, and again, back to my original impulse, like why I was a fan, was finding all that stuff out or writing it down or doing my own theory. And either way, either making up canon universe to fill the gaps, gap filling,
Yep.
I call it gap filling and canon
Yep.
smoothing, or before retconning was a word, I had my own words, or the making of, doing all that. And so when they rudely shifted me out of, canonizing over into making of world with the book, and then Stellar Cartography was an overlay of in-house fact and real science as much as we could do it, building on Jeff's shoulders and on Mike's shoulders and keeping that same thing going. And I updated it. That's what Stellar Cartography was. But Portal 47 was all those people that never in the old days would never be a convention guest. They never got interviewed, or like once in their career, they got interviewed somewhere, and it would be for a little sliver. So Portal is bringing those people out in a way that I can have as a monthly service. And then the day tours came about because one year I was at Vegas and a guy came up to me, Terrace Cassidy from Alberta, who has a company called Geek Nation Tours that he started coming out of the crash in '08. Like, he was a travel agent, and what can I do to survive?
Right.
And he would come up with these tours to military historic sites around the world. And also, he was a big gamer. He was a tabletop gamer and loved like Adepticon and Gen Con. And he gets people and goes to a convention. Like, the 20 of them go and they rent a big place and they go to the con. It's not really a tour. I don't get that. He's gone to feudal knights of Japan, or he's gone to the castles on the Rhine, or they went to Waterloo on its anniversary. I mean, he's done big things like that.
Yeah.
And he says, do you think a Star Trek tour would work? Well, I had all the call sheets and all the people and all the info about, people know Vasquez rocks in the Gorn fight, but there's so much more than that. And I said, absolutely, we can do that. So we started doing a big tour in 2012 and then 2014, 2016. And on the side, I said, I could do this as a day tour. Only I would do it for the people who come to LA. And if they don't want the actor suicide tour, or something, if they don't want something like that, if they want a Star Trek tour, we can go to location sites. And I don't have to answer to anybody for that.
No.
Right. It's a public place or whatever. Thereabouts.
So that's where and then that year that you run the tour, that's the one time that the cruise left from LA.
Exactly. Yeah. Florida.
And I said, I'll offer this today, and I didn't get it promoted that well. I mean, I did I had about 10, 12 people the day before and the day after. And the day before was the weird weather day when there were snow flurries. And it
was so bizarre.
We had to park and walk a half mile because we couldn't go down to the rocks, as you probably remember. And we were walking, and I said, guys, are you up? And they're like, oh, yeah. And I said, well, okay. They're like, most of them were East Coast, and they weren't going to get to LA. A lot of them had never been to LA. And they didn't mind it at all. We all had coats on in February in LA, which is weird. And there was snow, little dusts of snow. And as we walked, I saw you, and I saw everybody like you. We were walking along, and you'd see little clusters of 2 and 3 and 4 people. And I'm like, these are all with their Star Trek stuff on. And I'm like,
my wife and I were wearing matching windbreakers with our fan club chapter patch on them. Yeah, that was us.
Everybody had something like that. And I'd see, here's 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. And I'm like, everybody came out here the day before. They're all doing this on their own, which was awesome. And then they would look over and see us like bopping along this 10, and like you did, 10 people in a cluster, and people were like, and everybody instantly knew what the others were doing. It was really, it was really funny. And it's great that you were there. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then you and I, we met again at Vegas that year. The year we went to Vegas, and we corresponded via email. And now it's been 2 years, and now you're here with us. So, okay, Peter. Peter's last question.
Oh yeah, something that's near and dear to my heart is fan productions. I worked on. I actually work on an audio drama behind the scenes. I'm the behind the scenes guy. But I saw you in Star Trek Continues, and you got to play Dr. McCoy, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And then you also were on New Voyages and some other stuff. So I was just curious about your experience with that and how you look at and interact with fan productions like that.
Well, that was incredible. I wound up getting on New Voyages because we had done a story when I was editor of the Communicator for the last 7 years that it existed before everything blew up in 2005. And we'd had a story about the new fan films that the Johnson brothers were doing. Not the Farragut. I've gone blank. The Intrepid? It was the Johnson brothers out of Texas.
Yeah, I think there you go. Intrepid, yeah.
And we did a story, and they sent pictures, and we used them. And it was great. And one day I was in the art department. What would it have been? It was Enterprise by then. It was the old DS9 room, but everybody just kind of moved over to Enterprise. And after 2 years, and Mike says, Larry, there's somebody here you need to meet. And he took me in, and James Cawley was there. And I had vaguely heard about the fan film. Well, we did a story. Mm-hmm. And I knew there were a couple others happening. But this is the days when YouTube was not owned by Google yet. And everybody was dial up, and they would release these things an act at a time because it took you like an hour and a half or 2 hours to download 10 minutes of video.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So hey, kids, this is almost as good as paper and stamp days for
Yeah,
communicating.
right. So your SASE.
Yeah. Yes. Your SASE was your currency. So anyway, he says, Larry, this is, and James is like, oh, this is awesome. It's this, I'll never forget this. He's like, you're the editor of Communicator. This is great. And Communicator was the licensed magazine
Right.
from, Dan Madsen, Colorado. And he's like, oh, this is great. Well, I'm working on a fan film too. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. It's going to become the new thing.
Star
And
Trek: The Communicator.
oh my God, you've got the Bound.
I got this. I have a buddy of mine who's a flea market guy who sold me a box of stuff for like $25, and this was part of it.
I have one, but I've never seen anyone in the wild that also had one.
There you go. There you go.
Oh my God, that's a
I know. All right.
box.
All right, I'll put it down.
No,
that's
I'm like, actually, I have a bound copy, but that's a slipcover. I've never seen that before. The box.
It was in I don't want to say a box of junk, but it was in a random box of stuff that my buddy Bradley, who's a flea market toy shop guy, kind of like toy show guy like I am, that we traded for. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, so it's,
yeah, many fond memories and long hours working for almost no pay on that, but it was a labor. A lot of stuff got preserved that needs to be, those need to be scanned on the internet like they scan Starlog. They desperately do. But anyway,
I will hold on to it just like that. It will stay here on my shelves.
Good. Well, you've got it where you can actually pull them out. So James says, this is awesome. And he says, I've got one little complaint. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I live for complaints because I'd go to cons and we'd have fans and I'd say, anybody what's your comment? What's your feedback? And everybody's like, oh, it's perfect. Just keep it exactly the way it is, which is nice. I know in this era of toxic fandom, it's hard to imagine that, but that's like live fandom versus the online anonymous idiots. But he says, I've got one little complaint. I go, what? He goes, and he flips open the magazine to the article about the Johnson brothers, right? In the intro, and he goes, that's not their bridge. That's our bridge. And I'm like, what? And they're standing on, I'm like, what? He goes, they came and filmed on our bridge. And I'm like, oh okay. So tell me about it. And he's telling me about, then they're going to shoot and da-da-da. And he goes, so can you like do a retraction or correction and say, I go, well, no one's going to see that, but why don't we just do a story about yours? And he's like, oh, okay. And then I'm his new best friend. And he's going to make me a McCoy dress uniform. I mean, he's doing all this stuff. Like, it's okay. You don't have to do all this. So that's how I met James and wound up going out one day and being a cameo in a couple of their shows, especially getting to be a Tellarite in one of the shorts they did that was almost lost and then brought back and resurrected, which I loved. I've got video and pictures of them putting, because it was a regular full Tellarite makeup prosthetic in the nose.
Yeah.
And doing that. And that was like in the early days.
Wow. Yeah. My goodness. I don't know which one of us, does one of us live under an airport? Is that you? Is it? do you live under the airport? I'm hearing planes.
You can.
Okay. Gotcha. I just want to make sure it wasn't me. We're good. Let me wrap up by asking, I mean, you've talked a lot about Trek Tours and some of that other stuff. How do people find these projects? How do they engage you with that? How do they take a tour if they live in LA, if they live anywhere, they're coming to town, they want to connect with you? How do they do that?
LarryNemecek.com. I didn't say anything about continues, but I'll just say that was a blast, and it was short notice, and I did the 2 and then stayed a consultant with the show, and very proud of what's actually on film and people we work with there too. It was awesome. But LarryNemecek.com is my website, and my YouTube channel, which I got into the YouTube promo game late because originally your YouTube was your free server for your blog video.
Blog video.
Seriously, I have a lot of really old. I've got tons of stuff I've never put, like interviews with guest stars I'd see at signing shows and things. I haven't put it up yet, but it'll get there. But no, that's all there at my YouTube. Larry's Trekland on my YouTube channel is big, but everything you can get to at my LarryNemecek.com, and that's awesome. 47, the business, and Stellar Cartography. Well, you can, I guess. Trekland Treks is what I call those day tours, and I work with people to like, here's the 50 plus things around SoCal, and you pick out what you want, and I'll get you there, and it'll be our day, 6 hours in the day, and a fast food lunch, and nice. It's picking up. It's kind of exploded after the cruise. It's kind of wild, but I just
man, that's awesome.
The first time in 3 or 4 months after the winter last weekend. A couple
Yeah.
got engaged in Bronson Canyon
Oh,
because it was
that's
where
magic.
Inner Light and Darmok were, and it was their 2 favorite episodes. And on the spur of the moment, they were going to do it later and come back in a couple of days on their own, but they just decided to do it there with me, and I could take pictures and video. It was amazing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was new. See, nothing. It's always something new.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then, yeah, like you said, you were on the cruise this past year. We missed it this year. We're going back next year. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
You know that we'll see you there.
They'll have me back again next year too. Yeah.
I will. I'll put in a note because I know you could submit requests, and I did one for Bonnie Gordon, who is who I've met a couple of times.
If there was ever anybody meant to be a cruise guest for Trek, it's Bonnie.
Gotcha. Well, I will plug you as well. Well, that is the time we have, Larry. This has been absolutely incredible. I never realized what a big fan of yours I was until we were having this conversation. So I'm very, very grateful that you took the time.
Well, that's like I say about Portal. I say Portal 47 is for all the Star Trek fans who have no idea how much Star Trek they still have no idea about.
Right.
And that's the background world. But I have Trekland Tuesdays Live. We do Trek Files for Roddenberry as a podcast, and I do Cadet Alice with my granddaughter, Cadet Alice, and Dr. Trek watch Prodigy. And then Second Opinion when there's fresh Trek is kind of like my reaction show. So that's all kind of blown up. And I have some more news coming later this year that maybe we can talk about later on.
Oh, very good. Yeah, we'd love to have you, man. Oh my God.
Then I'll back out. I'll back into the hedge now.
I would, Homer Simpson. I would love to have you on to do a podcast with Peter and I. Sometimes, as I said, we do a bi-weekly show. But at any rate, Patreons, thanks for tuning in. If you're not a Patreon and listening to this on our network feed, you can visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Try us out for free for 7 days and stay on board for as little as $2 a month and get great content just like this. Larry, again, thank you so much. We will talk to you in the future. Nanu, live long and prosper, and talk soon.
And Trek well, guys.
Trek well. Good night.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.